August 25th, 2020 Select Board meeting to order. Thank you to the board members for joining this meeting. It was called to support the Board of Health that has a vacancy with the resignation of former Chair Eleanor Shonkoff. The Board of Health has since met, reorganized, and decided on a less frequent and more work-friendly schedule. This took place after our last meeting. And so we're going to talk about the process for getting a new member onto the board as quickly as we can. We have two other short agenda items only tonight. Discussion by the board about sponsoring an article to bring the stretch code for new construction to town meeting in November. This is following up on a request that was made by town staff that was in our packet from our last meeting of August 11th, 2020, which we didn't take any action on at our last meeting. We ran out of time. And finally, we were going to set up some office hours for September and forward that I'd just like to establish tonight. I'm sorry to infringe on your well-earned time off, but I believe that the Board of Health issue by itself merited a quick meeting, and here we are. At our regularly scheduled meeting on September 8th, we will return to our more standard structure, where we'll have a COVID update, select board liaison reports, and public comment. So let's dig in. So first item is the Board of Health discussion.
Mark,
So,
Mark, I have a,
sorry, go ahead.
Vanessa had a hand up.
Oh, thank you, Carla. Mark, I had two questions or issues that had been raised to me by residents, but we don't have liaison reports. Should I mention them now or wait until later? What's your...
Why don't we do that at the very end? Obviously, they're not on the agenda, so it can't be a discussion. It can be for future agendas that we can talk about, but I take your point. That's something. I'm sorry. And Carlo.
Mark, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
As a formality, I will second and allow the vote.
Is there any discussion?
I'll go first, I guess. I think we're just setting a bad example of no public comment. It's not really our policy. And I'm concerned that we don't want to set a bad precedent. We talked about this before. I know in the beginning of COVID, it was a little bit different. We got through that, and I got a lot of calls and a lot of emails, and a lot of people are concerned that we're not allowing public comment on some topics tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Carlo. Any other board members with comments? Ann, do you want to say something? You're muted.
Please go ahead, Mark.
So the reason why I didn't put public comment into here was because the goal of this meeting is really in support of the Board of Health and to respond to a request both from the Vice Chair of the Board of Health and the Town Manager to not wait until our next meeting. Otherwise, I don't think there was a need for this meeting at all. It wasn't scheduled. So rather than allow for lots of other topics to come into play, the goal was to simply have this be what probably will be a very short meeting to allow us to move forward with the Board of Health. The stretch code was also on our agenda for the last meeting, but did not get covered. And lastly, I would hope that there's not going to be much discussion about setting office hours. So while I agree that typically we do want to offer as much public comment as possible, and we always do by email in any event, it seemed that it made much more sense on this meeting to move forward to address the specific concern that we have here. And then when we get back to our regularly scheduled meetings of September, to, as I mentioned, go back to our traditional schedule. We don't have liaison reports tonight either, which certainly we could have done and would do at a regular meeting. The agenda was meant to be very specific. It was called at the last minute so that if we didn't do this evening, we would not be able to appoint a person to the Board of Health until best case late September, possibly even early October. And that seemed like a bad outcome. So that's the reasoning. Ann, did you have a comment?
What is our policy? Do we have what is our written policy with respect to public comment, if any?
I'm not sure if there is a specific one. I know that as far as open meeting law is concerned, it indicates that public comment is encouraged, but by no means required.
Right.
And I'd say very regularly have had public comment offered at our meetings pre-COVID and COVID. There have been 2 retreat meetings one in, I think, February of 2020, January, February, I forget, as well as one more recently here where we didn't have public comment. And I believe that previous retreats that were done, certainly the one that was done at Jordan's, I don't think there was a public comment session for that one either. So I don't know that we have a formal policy, but we could take a look at that.
Carla, what were you thinking of when you said our policy?
I was pretty busy at work today. I didn't have time to look at it specifically today, but I could have sworn that as a policy, not as Mark mentioned, per the state, that we want to encourage public comment. Maybe not specifically allow it, but as a board, previous to us, we've always had public comment. And while these topics are supposed to be brief tonight, I'm hoping you'd all agree that public comment should be encouraged, not discouraged. I know Mark's not discouraging it per se, but the fact that in the agenda, in the packet says no public comment, in a sense is discouraging public comment.
I also was very sensitive to feedback that I received through the town manager that we don't want to politicize activities this evening. And I was very cognizant of that and felt that the best way to be clear about that was to keep our agenda clear. Again, we always encourage public comment. It can always come by email. At one point, we only had it coming by email, if I remember correctly, back in March. And I would be happy, at our next meeting to make sure that we have ample time for whatever comment people have.
I'm wondering about the agenda items tonight. The Board of Health conversation, I think, is basically procedural in nature. With respect to the stretch code, is that a policy determination that we would be making tonight, or are we having a conversation and would vote at a subsequent meeting?
It is a conversation for tonight, but it gives direction to staff about how to move forward with the warrant article.
Okay, but we're not taking a vote tonight on that?
I didn't think we needed to. Karen, do you feel differently? I assume we do it with the warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we needed to do this last meeting and we didn't get to it. We went through the meetings in details for almost an hour. We are running up again, it's a deadline thing. We're running up against a warrant deadline item. So that's why it's on here.
So it was on the last meeting's agenda. Was there any public comment on it last meeting?
There was not.
Agenda, we never covered it.
Okay.
But in the public comment, there was no discussion of it.
Okay. So there has been an opportunity for public comment on that. So one of the agenda items is procedural in nature. The second is one that has previously appeared on agenda for which there was public comment made available, but no public comment provided on that agenda item.
Right. Vanessa.
Thanks, Mark. Further to Ann's point, since we're not actually voting on anything, including the warrant, it sounds like the public will still be able to participate via public comment at our next meeting when we discuss this, because
Yes.
It'll be on the warrant. So it's, it'll be available for further discussion in September.
Correct.
And we're
if
anticipating
there's
no
any-
votes tonight.
I'm sorry.
We're anticipating no votes tonight.
I don't think we need to take a vote related to the Board of Health. And Karen, correct me on this. I don't think we need to take a vote on the stretch code article. It will come up. It needs to come up and be on the warrant. We're going to close the warrant in September, possibly at the first meeting, possibly at the second. But if we haven't discussed it in advance of that, there won't be an opportunity to bring it to town meeting.
And you all have more experience closing the warrant than I do, but this would be an article sponsored by the select board, so it makes sense that you had the information you needed before the warrant vote came up.
And again, that discussion would be just to put it on the warrant. Any further
I'm comfortable
discussion?
voting on the motion if everyone else is.
Oh, just one further question. Emails received between our last meeting and our next meeting will be included in our next meeting's packet?
Yes. So anything between our last meeting and the next meeting will all need to be in the next packet, so long as they make it before the publication date, which would be the Thursday before the meeting. Okay, any other discussion? None appearing. We will take a roll call vote. I'm going to take you as I see you in my screen here. So, Anne, you're first.
No.
Vanessa?
No.
Carlo?
Yes.
Karen?
No.
And Mark? No. We are 4-1. Okay. And okay, back to Board of Health. So, just a couple of quick comments. So why are we here? Why are we having this discussion? Both the vice chair of the Board of Health through the liaison and the town manager reached out asking us to fill the vacancy on the board as soon as possible. We want to be very supportive of our volunteer boards, especially the Board of Health in this time of COVID. I asked town staff to reach out to members and candidates that have already worked with VASC to see if there was interest by some members of that group to join the Board of Health. If you'll remember, the previous workload was too much for some candidates, and the last time we had to replace a person on the board, we only had one candidate. As I now understand it, there's interest by either 3 candidates or members for slots on the board with one full-time vacancy. So what I'd like to have happen is that the select board tonight would discuss if it's acceptable to work with the existing candidates and members, and if so, to ask the VASC to meet before our September 8th, 2020 meeting to make a recommendation to the full board so that we can appoint a new volunteer at that meeting and not lose any time. If we hadn't done this until our September 8th meeting, then the best case to appoint someone would be September 22nd, and only if the board was comfortable that we had enough candidates. So that's the reasoning and the structure. So Carrie Donnell, the vice chair of the Board of Health, is with us this evening, and I was hoping, Carrie, you could just add a little more color to this discussion so that the board can decide how to move forward.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for taking this meeting during your well-deserved break. We are at a deficit right now in our board members. We have 4 members. 2 of them are full members and 2 of them are associates. I am a full member, as is Paula Curran. She and I were appointed very closely in time to each other at the middle and end of June. And then we have 2 associates, and that is one is Rick Lopez and the other is Kevin Sexton. And because we only have the 4, and because we only have the 2 full, Paula and I are the quorum. If one of us is unable to attend, then there can be no meeting of the Board of Health. And we would really welcome the opportunity to have another full member participate, as well as another full member, I guess. I mean, there's 2 openings, so it's another full, and then it's a question of, does it become a full and an associate, or I'm not sure how the permutations work, but we could use a full complement. It's really challenging to be a board of 3. We are modifying the schedule. We've been able to eliminate the Monday meetings. We'll either rotate or have, I've volunteered to be the standing person to attend the Monday command meetings. And we've shifted the Thursday meetings to be evening meetings. It's a little more friendly for a working person's schedule, perhaps. So that is where we are. I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Board members, any questions for Carrie?
Carrie, my understanding from our previous conversation we had is that although you were serving as vice chair and effectively acting as chair in the interim, the board has not fully reorganized and plans not to do so until you have a full cohort.
That is correct. I had before the former chair had to step down, I had already let the board know that I could not be a candidate for the chair seat as much as I'd like to. My workload for my paying jobs is incredibly demanding, and it would be irresponsible of me to take on the role as much as I might like to, in some ways. And I haven't talked to my other members, so I'm not sure where they stand. But yes, we are operating with this way. I said I'm happy to act as chair in this interim period, and look forward to having a full complement so that we can get back to doing some business.
And the other impression I had from our conversation was that it would be helpful to have a full cohort sooner rather than later, and that your hope is that the most recent applicant pool would be sufficient to draw from as you have changed your schedules. The Board of Health has changed its schedule. If we were to reopen applications, that would require posting and would delay our ability to fill the position. So your preference, at least, not necessarily, but perhaps speaking for the board, would be to move forward as quickly as we can, drawing from the existing applicant pool. Is that fair?
That's fair. Yes, that's accurate. And I cannot speak for my other board members,
Okay.
but we did discuss, the challenges. We discussed the hope we had that the previous candidates would be open to joining, given the new schedule. We did discuss that and hope that would work. And it's our understanding that there was a nice complement of qualified individuals that expressed interest in being on the board, which is just lovely.
Right.
And if any of them are interested in serving, that seems like that would be an excellent solution.
Carlo,
Mark, I have a question for Kerry.
please.
Kerry, as it stands right now, from what I heard, that Monday meeting is a command meeting that's not required.
Correct.
Okay, so as of right now, August, whatever it is, you're meeting at night.
As of right now, correct. We are meeting Thursday evenings at 7:00, and the Monday command meeting. So if more than one of us attends, we have a quorum. So it's a open meeting. For a lot of reasons, it makes it easier for people if everyone doesn't have to attend that one standing meeting, and we've agreed that we could rotate that through the membership, or if membership desired, we could have one person be the representative for the board who would report out of next Thursday meeting.
I'm sorry, I don't know. When is your next scheduled meeting?
Our next scheduled meeting will be Thursday the 3rd.
Third. And so if you, for whatever reason, Karen and I should be able to get it done. If you don't have a new member, one of the associates can act as a full at that meeting.
That's correct. We could elevate someone for a vote for that meeting. Not ideal, but certainly, our associates are well engaged and could act in that way.
And we should let our applicants know, as we did last time, that there could be a chance in the future of meetings during the day or the morning again.
Yeah, I mean, I can't predict, and I would hope that the rotation would be amenable to people, but that may not be the case. So certainly it could be possible. Although I will add that Chief Burns in command did mention that it would be possible to consider changing that meeting time if 11:00 on Monday was the barrier, and that an afternoon meeting was easier for someone. So that's not written in stone, as they say, at that 11:00 time.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments, questions from the board? None appearing. Okay, so this is what I was hoping we could do. We could, as a group, ask VASC to now set up meetings with candidates. We know that there are some current board members that are interested in the full-time role as well, and some outside candidates. But for the VASC to go through their process, do interviews before our September 8th meeting, and to be able to come to the board with a recommendation at that meeting. And then what we'll do is we'll put vote on Board of Health appointment onto our agenda. Is that okay with the board? Karen?
So we have two current members. We interviewed them both. They are on the Board of Health actively. And then we have, I believe there are three, well, depending on how many other candidates are willing to step forward. I guess, do we need to re-interview the folks that are on the board currently? Because clearly they're willing to serve and we've already spoken to them and we have their credentials in their application. Is it necessary to set up another meeting? I'm wondering, should we just ask them if they can?
Oh, we lost your voice there completely. Your voice trailed off. Sorry.
Would it be pertinent to ask them if they were willing to be the chair?
So we could not appoint them the chair, but to ask if people would be willing to step up, I think would be a reasonable question if the board so decided. But again, that's in the Board of Health's domain. Vanessa.
Thanks. Karen, I think your question was whether or not you and Carlo have asked me to interview candidates who had already applied. Short answer is no, especially given how quickly this both needs to be done and how recently you already interviewed them. It's not a necessity.
And then I would say that's for you guys to then discuss how you want to come forward with a recommendation or recommendations for people.
It could still be worth a conversation, given that it almost feels like it would be important to have a conversation, although perhaps it's fine to do at a staff level to let folks know about the change in schedule and the need to appoint a chair, given that Carrie, for example, is not given her the demands on her plate, not able to serve in that position at this time. So it could still be maybe not an interview, what are your credentials, but a conversation about the board's current demands and needs, which have changed since the time you conducted those interviews.
Yeah.
And actually, we actually went a little bit back and forth. With the initial interviews, I think we had a lot of people that expressed interest in both full and associate positions. After appointing the people, and when we had the last vacancy, town staff asked the question of people, given the workload, the current workload, would you be interested in applying for the position now? And only one person stepped forward at that time. So it's important first that the town staff reached out to find out of the current candidates and members if there were people that would be interested and able to meet the commitments. And the answer is yes. There are at least two, and I'm not completely sure of my email, but I think there are three. But I think there are at least two from folks that are already in the candidate pool, as well as current associate members potentially interested in becoming full-time members. So there are enough people conceivably, but Vask, I think that's your job, is to kind of make sure that folks are interested and willing to participate and then come forward with a recommendation to the full board. Vanessa.
Yeah, I would recommend that Carlo and Karen, especially considering there's so few candidates, that they do the outreach as opposed to the staff.
Well, the outreach has already been done. The outreach has already been done to I believe the candidates that were in the pool before. And we already know that there are some current members that are interested in becoming full members.
My understanding, I attended the Board of Health last Thursday, I think it was, Carrie, and my understanding, you correct me if I'm wrong, is that both current associates have said yes, we would apply for the full position. Is that correct? Or they sent in their application, I believe.
In our conversation, I did hear that from Rick Lopez, who is our current associate. Kevin Sexton, our other associate, was not present at that meeting. So there may have been other conversations with him, but I have not talked to him. And I'm not clear on, I don't know his position on that. But Rick did say that he was interested, and I was frankly delighted to hear that, as was Paula.
I heard that as well. You guys were working well together that evening, which was wonderful. And I thought I heard comments that Sexton had also indicated interest, but I'll defer to you.
And I'll just, if I may, Mark,
Please.
I want to just say it really is it's an excellent group. It's a pleasure to work with this board. We work hard, but it really is an excellent group. And I just want to, someone may have said it already, but I would want to be clear that the schedule that we are intending to adopt is every other Thursday. So it would be twice a month as opposed to the twice a week that we were looking at when it first came out. That's all.
Great. Thanks. So, board members, are we comfortable asking the VASC now to meet and decide who they would like to bring forward, and then bring that to our September 8th meeting for a vote for appointment? I'm seeing some heads nodding. Any objections to moving forward that way? No objections. Okay. So VASC, we would ask you to meet and have this discussion, and we'll plan to have a vote on the 8th of September. Carrie, thanks for joining. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you for having me, and thank you. I'm sorry for the extra work. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for all the work,
Thank
you.
and all of your fellow Board of Health members.
Yeah.
You're really going above and beyond for us that in this time of need. We really appreciate it.
We're happy. We're happy working together. We're glad to do it. So thank you.
That's really great.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Well, thanks.
Good night.
Good night. Okay, second item on our agenda tonight, stretch code article. So board members, again, this was brought up in the packet from the previous meeting. There's a short presentation, a couple of slides that I think Karen put together on green communities and the stretch code here. And that was in the published packet. At our last meeting, town staff asked if the board would sponsor an article to town meeting about this. We ran out of time. We didn't get to it. So my hope was that tonight Karen could kind of run through this information so board members can ask any questions that they may have. So with that, can I hand it to you, Karen?
You can try. So I did put together the slides in the packet along with a link to the Green Communities Program. I also spoke prior to our last meeting to the chair of the Climate Advisory Committee to see if they would prefer to sponsor the article. And while he told me they are fully in support of putting this stretch code adoption as a warrant article, they would prefer if the select board sponsored it because they felt that it would be stronger. So,
So board members, do you have any questions about what Karen just said or about those three slides that she presented that talk about what the stretch code is, talk about green communities? The reason that staff brought it up is because it's a prerequisite to moving things forward on green communities. If we don't tackle it in November, then any discussion gets pushed to at least April. So that's the reasoning behind it.
One question. So I'm seeing in the presentation, it's a requirement of green communities application in order to be eligible for annual municipal energy saving grants up to $250,000. Does that mean it is a requirement to receive a designation as green communities?
yes,
As a green community?
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
I just have sorry, Mark, I have a question.
Carla, go ahead, please.
I couldn't open up the slides even though I looked at them. I'm just going by the packet from last week on number 2. How will the public be informed of this change? Obviously, public discussion and town meeting. And then it goes to say the plastic bag ban was discussed. Follow that process. I don't really trying to get a better understanding on that with that.
You just cut out the plastic bags. Doesn't have any-
Sorry, item number 2 was how will the public be informed of this change? Suggestion was to model the MAPC DOER protocol. The plastic bag ban was discussed. Maybe follow that process. So I'm just asking what that process was since I'm not familiar with it.
That's an excellent question. Jean Delios, Assistant Town Manager, has been stressing the need for community outreach prior to town meeting on this warrant article for a number of months. She is on vacation this week, was unable to join us. She did say that when she comes back, we can go ahead and look at the calendar and schedule some outreach sessions to, take the time we need to take to answer people's questions. It's a good question.
And I think there's an acknowledgement. The timing here is a little bit tight, but the outreach is very important and it would need to take place. So the board is being asked, whether or not we'll sponsor the article to town meeting. That's kind of what'll be in play when we talk on the 8th. And then the process behind that, town staff obviously will be driving most of those activities.
So that we will vote on the 8th?
So I think we vote on the 8th to sponsor it as a warrant article. And then we may close the warrant. We'll close the warrant either on the 8th or on the 22nd.
Okay.
Depends on how much other activity is going on, what else is being brought forward.
I wanted to apologize. It was a typo I didn't get. I noted that. So if we adopt this at November town meeting, then it can be implemented in spring of 2022 for new projects. I think that's important. There's a lot in the pipeline.
And I think there will be a lot of public comment and question about this. I know that I attended a presentation and there was a lot of discussion about, but how does this apply to current projects and past projects and homeowners and things like that? And it's much simpler. It's a forward activity that we're talking about. And how many communities? We know that 270 communities, 250 communities.
That line says about 283 as of July. When I was able to locate today, when we had the presentation from Mass MAPC and DOER, Jean thoughtfully recorded it, and I'm so glad she did. So I can send the link to Bob and ask him to share it with you, so you could watch it. It's an hour, and I was the slides in there are terrific. I went back again. I said, "Oh, thank God she recorded this, so I don't have to follow up with them and ask for the slides again."
Awesome, thanks, Carlo. You had another comment.
Yeah, no, I wonder as a resident and a citizen and a taxpayer, will information, because Mark, I agree with you, said this, I assume this will be a forward, once we get gets passed, but what, is there going to be more detail? Because I'd like to, is there someplace we can go as the general public to understand this better? Because it seems to be a lot that will be enacted or implemented once we vote on this as a town meeting body.
Great, Karen.
Sure. Great question, Carlo. So in the packet this week should have been the link to the full Green Communities program. So that is definitely a good link to go to for anyone who doesn't realize what they were voting on at town meeting or never heard of this before. They should go there. And then I thought, if you guys agree, it would be a good idea to get some or all of that presentation that we already had with the folks from MAPC explaining to us how this works up on a page. And that would be part of the outreach so that people can go and self-service. If they can't make the meeting, they can sit through the same presentation. And but I definitely agree. We will flush out the various methods for public outreach and getting questions and getting them answered.
No, thank you. I think when we hear green, we all like that word, right? It's a great word to be green. How, but when you see stretch code, that is, very unclear. So I think what you said, Karen, will be very helpful.
Absolutely. And I think in in preparation for town meeting, the notion of having a lot of public discussion about it. And then obviously, once that moves forward, it would come to town meeting. There'd be a presentation at town meeting, sharing with them what's being discussed, what's being asked, what the implications are. And town meeting will have a chance to ask their questions about it as well, to make sure that they understand and if they're in agreement with it or not. So our role would only be as part of sponsoring it to the warrant. And then staff has a lot of activity in terms of public outreach, and then presentation to town meeting, and then making sure town meeting has the answers that they need. Other questions, comments? Go ahead, Karen. Sorry.
I was going to clarify that Jean and Julie have presented to the bylaw committee, so they are on board. She had the timeline out that we needed to get this done. The only wrench we threw in the process was not addressing it at our last meeting. And thank you, Mark, for scheduling this.
Yeah. Again, just to make it clear, the Board of Health was the driver on this, and this was another item that by waiting until our next meeting, we'd miss a chance for the board to have a quick discussion. The public will certainly be able to give input to this for our next meeting. So I guess the question here is just, again, sense of the board, not a formal vote, but is this something that's interesting to support, what's the right word I'm looking for, Karen? To sponsor, sorry, for the warrant. I think that's the right word. Am I getting general? It'd be good to have a discussion. Are there things that are needed? Vanessa?
Thanks, Mark. I think this is great. Obviously, many of the communities within the Commonwealth have already signed on for this. There's a lot of benefits to it. I'm on board. The only question I have for you, Karen, since you've been spearheading this, is what is RMLD's take on this? Since a lot of it is energy conservation, and we're in a unique situation with the municipally owned utility, have they weighed in at all? Because and if not, that's okay. But if there's energy conservation, that's great. But there's a rate implication there as well. So I just want to make sure that if we sign on to this, that RMLD is at least in the loop.
They have been, good question. They have been participating in the Green Communities calls, so they are aware of this. I don't think that there is in general, across the state, across the nation, we are all trying to be more energy efficient. So that is why they understand this. So that is why they get excited when there are opportunities for us to be energy efficient, reduce our carbon footprint, and also buy more electricity through electric vehicles. So one of the other components of Green Communities is transitioning to a very energy efficient transportation fleet. And they certainly see, and want to be part of that, if I may speak for them. They're big supporters of electric vehicles. So to answer your question, yes, they've been involved. Colleen has been helping the staff work through some of the other issues with the larger Green Communities program. The stretch code can actually stand on its own.
Great. Then I'm fully in support, Mark.
Thanks, Vanessa. Carla?
Thank you, Mark. Karen, thank you, Vanessa. That was helpful. Karen, does us implementing this affect the other 3 towns under RMLD, or are they already part of it?
It does not affect them.
Okay.
They are not. If you look back at the map, you'll see that the RMLD towns have not adopted this, unlike the rest of the state. So I think they'll be very interested to see what Reading does, but it does not affect the other towns.
Okay, so the CAB or the board really can't dissuade us or stop us at all.
So as it relates to stretch code you're talking, Carlo? Or?
Yeah, sorry, the stretch code part.
Stretch code, right, yeah. So we stand on our own on that completely. On the Green Community side, there are lots of discussions going on. I know Karen's been working very closely with RMLD to try to find what we can do to make that happen. I can't speak for RMLD, but they have expressed a lot of interest in understanding how to take advantage of some of these opportunities and to figure it out and to make sure Green Communities is in fact the right way. But the stretch code is kind of by itself, kind of joining with 280 roughly out of 350 communities in establishing this as the right way to move forward. Okay, I'm not seeing any other comments. So what I would suggest is if there are other questions, Karen has been spearheading, please, send a question to Karen. And, then we can turn that into either a presentation or whatever else. And I think, Karen, your idea of posting that MAPC meeting is a great idea. So anybody who wants to can see it.
I will take the first step at least sharing it with the rest of you. I didn't realize that I had it, and I was struggling to find it today, and very happy that I did, because that's going to be the basis of our public outreach. It was a great meeting, a lot of good information. Thanks.
Awesome.
Just a quick comment. I'm encouraged by what I've heard tonight. Appreciate the clarifications that Karen has provided. Given our earlier conversation about not taking votes, though I don't want to sort of commit or signal additionally my plans for how to vote on the warrant article. I think, we always sort of go above and beyond the open meeting law requirements with respect to the to inclusion of a public comment section and all of the emails we've received. I understand this meeting was sort of outside of the ordinary course of business. It's an extra meeting because of the Board of Health vacancy that arose, and, expect and, encourage us sort of to return to our regular programming of public comment and lengthy packets for our next and subsequent meetings. So.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Thank you. Let's move to item 3. So office hours. We have not been doing these. We used to do them very regularly, essentially before each meeting. We'd have them either at Town Hall, the Senior Center, or the library. Those are the typical locations in terms of a kind of, I'll call it a formal office hour, where we kind of announce and post publicly that, hey, we will be available at this time to have discussions. What I wanted to suggest is that we consider kind of coming back to this practice now. It may be that Zoom video and just using the telephone can work to kind of support this. And what I was hoping to do at last meeting, and apologies that we didn't do it, was to kind of say, hey, I'm happy to take one on September 4th. I had spoken to members of the Council on Aging and Human and Elder Services, and they were very interested in having someone find a structure that would work. So what I was going to suggest to the board is that we each kind of set something up for September. I would be very happy to take, sorry, I'm just checking my notes, Friday, September 4th from 9 to 10 a.m. I would propose that I would do this by Zoom, but with a phone number also. So people, if they want to join over the internet video, that's fine. If they want to just call, that's also fine. And then have that available, and I will sit for the office hour. Try that and report back to the board as well and see how that worked and what's happening. I know that a lot of times we took a half an hour before our meetings started to do that. So we do it at kind of 6:30 to 7 p.m. before a meeting. And I think for some people that works. I'd like to have some variety in the times that we do that. And that's why the 4th at 9 a.m. I thought would be a good one. So other members, if you have thoughts on timing or about the structure, great. I will commit to September 4th, 9 to 10 a.m. And then post that. If there are other folks who want to do that, I just like to get, to make sure that we've got 2 meetings set for September. We have an opportunity to do some kind of one-on-one outreach. And Karen, I think you may actually have done kind of did you do an informal office hour recently?
I did actually speak to one resident, so that was good. Otherwise I was like, oh rats, no one's coming. So it was fun, and I enjoyed the social distancing aspect of it. And I was going to ask a question, because while the weather's nice, how formal are the posting requirements? Can we say I'm going to do it, downtown at Cafe Nero, and then if it starts raining, say, okay, it'll be Zoom and here's a phone number. How formal do these, does the posting have to be?
So, go ahead, Vanessa. You may have the most experience with this.
So if we're doing office hours, it needs to be in a location that is open to the public and accessible. So there was once, for example, where Ann and I had a meeting in Cafe Nero. So the same rules apply to a board meeting or subcommittee meeting as would to office hours. So you could do it outside. However, a change of location means that there would need to be a notice put on. There would need to, if the location is changed at the last minute, there would need to be a notice of where it was moved to. So that one's falls into a little bit of a gray area if the weather doesn't agree with you within 48 hours. So indoors, I think, is recommended, or Zoom.
Okay. Does it have a 48-hour requirement? That's really my question.
So to post it, no, but I mean, the more notice we give people, the better chances we have of someone attending. And so outside is just a little iffy unless we have a location that we can both sit inside and outside.
Yeah, the other question becomes, even if you were to have it outside, what if you suddenly do have a number of people that come at the same time? It just makes it a bit more difficult to work through. Board members, obviously, you can talk and meet with residents, whenever you want to. The issue here is more to have kind of a posted time where people know here is an opportunity to speak, and here's as Vanessa said, here's public access to be able to do it. So if there are other folks who want to kind of set that up now, that's great. If not, then I think at our next meeting, on the 8th, each of us should make sure that we've kind of selected a time to do that.
Sounds good.
Is that right? Okay. All right. Any other business? So Vanessa, you mentioned that you have received some inquiries, again, not on the agenda, so we can't talk about them, but what we could do is allow them to go to a future agenda.
That's fine. Thank you, Mark. So the first one is neighbors around the water tower have reached out to me asking for an update on the project. They very much would like to be involved and participate in a hearing or in a public discussion. So I think that's maybe less about putting it on an agenda per se, and perhaps more if the board agrees to ask Bob or the staff to inform the neighborhood, not just the immediate abutters, but obviously anyone in that area is going to be interested in what decisions the board makes or the town makes on that property. So that's more of a request to pass on to staff for how that's going to take place. And I would recommend putting that on a future agenda. And then the second item is a resident of a property on Prescott Street reached out to me. There is a property that has a long history of abandoned vehicles, long-term temporary structures on the property. The resident has reached out to numerous staff members within the town hall and is seeking assistance in having those concerns addressed. There's a question of whether bylaws are being violated. So that may be, Mark, I'm happy to send you the address by email, and you can discuss with Bob on how to, or if to put it on a future agenda, but I wanted to raise that.
Is staff already aware of this issue? I'm assuming.
They are. This issue goes back years.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Any other business before us? Carlo, I would entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Karen. I think you're the second. All right. As I see you, Anne,
Yes.
Vanessa,
Yes.
Carlo,
Yes.
Karen,
Yeah.
Mark. Yes. Thank you, folks. Thanks for making the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you,
We're
Mark.
adjourned.
Well, have a great
Good night.
Night all.